Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thanks so much for dropping by. So, let's tune in. And if you haven't already, let's take a moment and tune in. In this moment, decide I want to be connected to God. Bruno Groening said to be connected to God, that is everything. And if you're like me, um, you have a busy life. And so it's very important for my sanity to, first of all, take moments and stop and reconnect. Of course, the goal is to stay connected all throughout the day. And even if it's just 1 minute to stop and breathe, personally, I take a lot longer than 1 minute multiple times throughout the day. And these meetings are part of how I do that. Good evening, Melody. Good evening, forever loving everything. So, let's hand over our worries, our fears to God, to a helper we trust. Really, with some force saying, here, God, Bruno, Christ, you can have this. Bruno said something to the effect that illness doesn't belong to us, and that worrying. Let's see if I can find very quickly. He said, worrying is the disease of all people. And really, that's how problems begin, is with, there's different ways of saying it, with worry, with lack of faith. And here's what Bruno Groening said on this topic. He said, but evil can only send you the thoughts that make you anxious if you accept them. So it's not even so much that worry is the disease of all people, though it is. It's we say yes, we take in the negative thoughts, which then create worry, which then disconnect us, block us from God. So let's be really mindful of our thoughts. Really keep an eye out for thoughts that don't feel good. And let's spend a minute or two connecting, reconnecting. If we're already feeling connected to God, deepening our connection. For anyone who's new, the way that Bruno Groening taught to do this was to sit with your legs uncrossed, feet flat on the floor, hands on your legs, palms facing upwards. Back in a relaxed, upright position. Not too tense, but not too relaxed. And then close your eyes. Think of something that makes you joyful. And then observe the body, having the will, the intention to receive this good energy. Noticing what you feel. Being mindful of thoughts, only saying yes to thoughts that feel good and are truthful. really taking in the good. Really asking to be guided by God. Bruno Groening said that our problems stem from listening to and following. And I need to do a little research on my German. In fact, I'll do it right now. The German word for listen doesn't just mean listen. One moment. It also means to pay deep attention to. Um, yeah, there it is. Okay, hold on one moment. The German word that Bruno would use is Horen, and I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Um, but it doesn't just mean to. It means to give deep attention to. It means also means to hark, a word that we don't use so often in English. But hark is when you really give your full reverential attention to something, as if something is true or holy. We can't operate that way with other people. We have to stay connected to ourselves because if you think about it, all day long we're bombarded, not just with thoughts, but things people say, things we read, Facebook, internet, texts. We have to stay connected to ourselves to recognize what's true and what's not. If only everything that everyone said is true. Oh, how I wish. Oh, how I wish I could just always speak what's exactly 100% true. I strive for that, and boy, do I fall short often. Accurate and true and helpful. So let's really tune in and listen deeply inside ourselves so we can get connected to that truth detector, the, the truth and or the lie detector, so that we can discern what's true and what's not true, what's helpful, what's not helpful. Tapping in, tuning in. So we started off, but it's not just listening to other people that we have to be mindful of. We have to be very mindful of the thoughts we listen to. Bruno Groening put forth the radical um, idea that we don't actually generate thoughts, that we pick them up. And the question is, which station are we going to tune into? Are we going to tune into the faith or the fear station? Are we going to tune into the true station or the seductive lie station? Moment by moment, day by day, thought by thought, that this becomes so important because here's what Bruno Groening said. Bruno over and over said that thoughts are very powerful. And here's what he said about exactly how powerful they are. He said, man acts according to his will. As his will, so his thought. The thought moves man to deed. So first we have our will to connect to what's good or what's not good. From that determines what kind of thoughts we take in. And those thoughts then determine which kind of actions we take. And then he laid it out a little more, and then he even elaborates a little bit on the other thing we read today. He said, but evil can only send you thoughts that make you anxious. So, my understanding, putting all this together, we have our will for the good or what's not good. Generally, when we have the will for what's not good, it's not like we're consciously saying, hey, I want something bad. It's more just habit and default. So, depending on which will we engage, that determines what kind of thought comes in. Then the thought determines how we feel. Negative, untrue thoughts are going to make us feel fearful, resentful, agitated. True, good thoughts are going to help us feel centered and calm. And then from that feeling, we act, right? If we're afraid, when I'm afraid, I don't make the best choices. I don't know about you. But when I'm calm and centered, I just tend to make better choices. And so here we can see how important thoughts are. The thought generates the feeling, which generates the action. We'd like to think that we're completely free and autonomous, but having observed myself, what I've discovered is I'm often, if I'm not very present and aware, I'm just kind of reacting to these thoughts and feelings, and then act. It's not really acting; it's more like I'm reacting. When I'm more in a calm, peaceful state, then I'm more able to act. And when I'm in a better place, then even if I'm not sort of choosing my actions, just the automatic things that happen tend to be more positive and good. So the thought generates a feeling, which generates an action. And there's our day. So let's really sit with this. All of this, the importance of monitoring our thoughts. Do you agree with Bruno Groening that um, our thoughts and our feelings, our feelings are generated by our thoughts, and then our actions come from either our feelings or our thoughts? Find out for yourself. I'm convinced that this is a very accurate model of human behavior, um, partially because I've studied something called cognitive therapy, which actually says something almost exactly the same. Um, it doesn't have the idea that we receive thoughts, but that our thoughts create our feelings and our feelings create our actions. Not 100%, not just like we're robots, like we have a feeling, so we must act a certain way, but that we tend to, in cognitive therapy, they say we tend to act based on how we feel, and we tend to feel based on how we think. It's a very profound, um, and this is, if I'm understanding it correctly, this is exactly what Bruno Groening taught. So let's take all this in, reflect. really take to heart how important it is to monitor our thoughts. Taking in the good, really wanting the good, not just for ourselves, not just for those we care about, but for everyone. So, when through observing the body, Bruno Groening said the truth will reveal itself to you. And that's a very strong statement that um, I can't say that I feel like the truth has been revealed to me, but that the truth is revealing itself to me. The further I go on this path, the more I feel um, that I'm just understanding about myself, about life, and about God. Interestingly enough, he also said that through observing our body gives us feedback about when something is good and not good. And I experienced this very clearly. So, as I've shared before, I participate in 12 step programs, which are, many, there's a wide variety of what 12 step programs are. And for me, what they are is the essence of what Jesus and Bruno taught of how to surrender, the practical nuts and bolts of how to surrender to God and be guided by God. And so I'm in the process of um, looking for a new sponsor, which means someone who will work through the 12 steps with me. And I spoke with someone, and wow, I was very impressed and a little mesmerized, actually. This person seemed very clear and very really knew the material, and I was very impressed, actually. And some things she said just didn't feel right. It was like 95%. Oh my gosh, this person is very I I'm going to learn and grow a lot with this person. But 5% was not just like, that didn't feel good, but it was 5% like something feels not good here. And it was confusing. And so I've just sat with it, and this um strong feeling of something not quite right has kind of grown. Um, and it ends up that what this person is teaching is a slightly distorted version of how to do the 12 steps. And this was very powerful for me to realize that this little feeling of not good actually had some wisdom, because it wasn't just, sometimes someone will say one thing and I'll be like, "Yeah, I don't like that," or I don't resonate. But this was like a something doesn't feel right, on a much deeper level. Um, and so, I've had this idea, come on, God, talk to me, give me guidance. And I'm realizing that God does give us guidance, that actually God's given us this body and given us, as Bruno said, a conscience that knows the difference between what's good and not good, but we've just gotten out of the habit of not listening, not observing the body, and not listening deeply to our conscience. And so, what if all throughout the day we're being guided? Um, and the guidance is really simple. What feels good and what doesn't feel good. Now, that's not to say, some things in life are uncomfortable and need to be faced. It's not like that we just avoid everything that's everything, like just strive to just be happy 24/7. Well, I mean, if anyone achieves that, let me know. Um, not saying that, but I'm saying, what if we are getting signals and we just haven't been listening? I know I haven't been listening, and I'm starting to. This that experience really opened my eyes. And then this morning, I went to church, and I had this plan after church to drop my car off to get an oil change. And church was great. I felt so good. I came out of it feeling just fantastic. And when I thought about going to get the oil change, like, it just didn't feel good. I was like, ugh. And but I was like, oh, but I have the plan and it's on my way, and it'll be so convenient because I can drop the car off and then have my morning walk. Like, mentally, it was like, yes. But there was this feeling of like, ugh, no. And I went and I overrode that feeling, and I went and did it anyway. And it just was really bumpy. And because I did that, I had forgotten about something else I said I was going to do. So I was getting that signal, like the heavens weren't opening up, and God was, saying, "Hey, don't go do the car right now. You have something else you've forgotten about." It was just this not good feeling in my body. And so Bruno Groening said that he came to restore our natural human instinct. So here are, I believe, two examples. The first one where I listened to that instinct, this, um, and from listening to that, um, it actually really protected me. It ends up that this particular person, the way that they and the group they're connected with is a little cultish. It's like a subgroup within the 12-step community. Um, I found out from someone else that it's actually a little bit, and I've a little bit cultish. So this feeling was really protecting me. And this morning, I was getting, not the same feeling, but a similar kind of feeling, like it doesn't feel good. Something's not right. But I overrode it, and nothing bad happened. But nothing terrible happened. But there were some bumps that happened that I could have avoided if I'd listened more deeply. So let's chew on this a little bit. Let's reflect. Do we want to be guided by God? And what are our ideas about how that happens? Observing the body, drawing in some good energy. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining in today. I have a short few announcements and then so we looked at the idea um, that it's very, very important to monitor our thoughts. That evil can and does send us thoughts which lead us to feel anxious, which leads us to make not good choices. And that Bruno talked about how our will determines the kind of thought, and then that determines our actions. And we also looked at that guidance might not be the always be the sky parting and God leaning forward from heaven and talking to us, that it can be a very it can be as simple as what doesn't feel good. And in fact, that's my understanding of what Bruno taught, is that we have this conscience inside of us and we need to learn to listen to it. And as human beings, we like to hear words. It'd be nice if my conscience had said this morning, "Hey, don't go change the oil. It's not a good idea." But it didn't speak to me that way. Sometimes I do hear an inner voice that sounds very wise, but more often than not, it seems to speak through feelings. And maybe that's why Bruno asked us to observe our body more and more, he said, every day, every hour, every moment. We're striving for that so that we can be guided moment by moment to what's good and true. And to pay attention to those nagging feelings. Sometimes they have wisdom. So I'd like to thank everyone watching the recording of this, and I'd like to thank everyone who's joining in live. Those who are joining in live, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end this and I'm going to start up another session where I do a healing report. It'll last another. So once this session ends, if you'd like to come listen to that, please drop by. Just go back to the main YouTube page. And for anyone watching the recording of this, if you're curious, I'm going to share a healing of knee condition. You're very welcome, Melanie. Mhm. So let's close with a little bit of silence. Once again, handing over any burdens, any challenges, illnesses, worries, resentments, and trusting them to Bruno or God. And then receiving, as Bruno said, receiving something new in their place. Observing the body, and then asking for those who are near and dear to us, for any specific situations, and for the whole world, wanting the good, that all suffering, all evil is lifted from this world, trusting that it will happen, as Bruno said it would, as I believe the main message of the Bible, that it will. If that's too complicated, just trusting what Bruno said, that the good will prevail. Thank you so much for joining in. Take care. Much love.